Welcome everyone to Shanti in Place, our weekly meditation and yoga wisdom gathering. As you may remember, this is the last session that we'll hold for a little while. We're going on hiatus for the month of July, and we will resume in August. So what we thought we might do today is have our practice and then spend a little bit of time just kind of reviewing in broad strokes some of the concepts and principles that we've been looking at, and perhaps examining and exploring how we might tie some of these things together and what we might want to reflect on or work on, particularly if you'd like to use this month of July as a way of internalizing and reviewing. But we'll begin with our practice as we generally do. I should also say we are streaming live on YouTube, and this video, along with videos of some of the other sessions, will be available on the YouTube channel of the Hindu Life program at Princeton. So you're welcome to kind of return to that. You're also welcome to keep your camera on or off as you feel comfortable, but we do ask that you keep yourself muted out, at least during our practice, and then perhaps we can have some conversation and discussion, and you can unmute at that time. So taking a moment to, with more intention and purpose, find our comfortable seat, our sukhasana. We spend so much time in our day sitting. Many of us spend the majority of our day or our working day sitting, and it's often something we do without even really thinking about it. But this is a different kind of sitting. This is sitting with intention. So just taking that moment, and sometimes it's just the slightest shift. So it may not feel that different, but we want to just take a moment, take a beat to shift our consciousness, shift our awareness, shift our intention to be more present, to be grounded. If you're sitting on the floor, maybe that means being more aware of the connection of your sit bones to the ground below, or to the mat or pillow that you're sitting on. If you're sitting in a chair, perhaps more intentionally grounding your feet, feeling the weight of your feet and the weight of your body connecting with the floor below. Taking that moment or two to feel grounded, to feel present. Taking a moment here to close or soften the eyes as we feel comfortable. We'll begin our practice with 3 deep inhales and exhales. Inhaling deeply through the nose and exhaling, perhaps parting the lips and sighing out through the mouth. Inhaling. Again. One final deep breath in and sighing out. Letting go of any expectation, any feeling of self-consciousness or awkwardness. Knowing that this is a time simply to connect with the breath, to take a moment to go within. There's no need to judge it, to manipulate it, to control it. allowing our breath now to find its natural rhythm. The flow in and out of breath that happens of its own accord, that happens when we're present, when we're comfortable, without straining in any way. And simply noticing this flow, noticing the breath. Noticing the sensation of the air entering our bodies on the inhale, and the sensation perhaps of release and of relief as we exhale. We can notice the texture of the breath, the feeling, perhaps the temperature even, the coolness or warmth of the breath. Simply letting our observation, our focus, our drishti be on this present breath. Perhaps taking a moment here to feel and silently express some gratitude, some appreciation for this precious gift of the breath, for the life air that animates us, that enlivens us, that empowers us. There is nothing we do to earn this breath, to demand or command it. There's no amount of money that can purchase it. It is perhaps the closest thing to us in this embodied state. And yet, we have no entitlement over it. We can't even claim to possess it. We simply receive it. We recognize it as a gift. We can always return to noticing the breath. But now turning our attention, our awareness to the physical sensations of the body. To any sensations or feelings we may be experiencing on our skin, perhaps a breeze or a feeling of warmth or moisture, whatever it is. Simply observing, simply noticing it. Noticing any sounds, any sensations that we're picking up on. that we're noticing through the faculty of hearing. We don't need to categorize what is a pleasant sound or what is an unpleasant sound, simply noticing, tuning in to whatever sounds there might be. Noticing the texture before our eyes. If our eyes are closed, perhaps just the play of some light or some shadows, movement or stillness, whatever is before our eyes. If we've softened our gaze, perhaps just that texture, that feeling of softness. Noticing now the smells, fragrances, odors. The sensations that make their way into our nostrils and then perhaps register with the mind, the brain. We don't need to figure out what those are, just taking stock of any smells that may be around us, engaging with us. Noticing any particular or general taste within the mouth, a residual taste perhaps, or just the texture of the insides of our mouths. Just noticing if there's some feeling of unease or discomfort. We don't need to do anything about it, just noticing it. And perhaps taking a moment here to manifest and perhaps to silently express some gratitude, some appreciation for the gift of this body, the gift of these foundational, fundamental, essential pathways to engagement with the world around us, these senses. Recognizing the wonder, the amazement of these gifts, these senses that allow us to engage with the world, that carry us in and out of so many experiences. Recognizing that we can observe them We can express our gratitude and our appreciation for them. We can witness them. Returning our awareness now to the breath, to the flow of breath. We can stay here, or if we'd like, for these final moments of our meditation together, we can move our awareness with just a little bit more intention deeper within ourselves. We can ride the flow of that breath to bring our awareness to our hearts. If you'd like to, we can place a hand or both hands near the region of the heart. Just taking these final moments to connect more deeply with that heart center. In Hindu wisdom traditions, the heart is said to be the mystical seat of the self. The asana, the seat of the witness, of the observer, of the Purusha, the Atman, the true essential being. Taking perhaps a moment here to become aware of and perhaps silently express our gratitude for this wonderful soft heart that allows us to be instruments of care and compassion, of kindness, of friendship, of discernment, of forgiveness, of justice. Expressing perhaps silently our gratitude for this awesome resting place, this wonderful safe space from which we can observe, from which we can practice awareness, from which we can simply be. And if we're feeling this gratitude, perhaps setting our intention to carry this gratitude forward as we bring our meditation to a close with one final deep breath in, and on the exhale, chanting the sacred sound vibration, the sonic embodiment of the infinite and the universal, the sacred syllable Om. Taking a deep breath in With ease and gentleness, blinking our eyes open or widening our gaze. Returning our awareness to our group, to our gathering, to this moment. It's a little hard to believe that we started this journey together months ago. I think it was the middle or the end of March, and we are now um, at the end of June, just about to begin our time of rest and hiatus in July. And it's been an amazing journey. I thought we would use just a few minutes to perhaps talk through or review some of the main principles that we looked at, and to offer perhaps a chance to do a little reflection and take stock on those aspects of what we've talked about that have felt very resonant and that we can appreciate as our gifts, as places that we feel very comfortable leaning into. Those places that perhaps are newer to us or present some growing edges, some challenges, and perhaps those that either as gifts or as areas of growth are really speaking to us as opportunities to connect with grace. So we talked about peace as both a state of place and a state of mind. And of course, in Shanti and place, we are very cognizant of the fact that there's so little control that we have over our external circumstances and surroundings, not only in this time of the pandemic, but really in one sense at all times. There's very little in terms of the circumstances and situations that face us that we have any real control over, but we have control over how we respond or react to those circumstances and to those situations. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to really lean into this idea of Shanti or peace as a state of mind, as something which we can cultivate. We began by looking at this kind of pairing, this dual pairing of abhyasa and vairagya, or what's called practice in the proactive sense, and letting go or non-attachment. How the two go together, how our practice is nourished by our ability and our willingness to recognize those things that we need to let go of, and how we are strengthened in our ability to practice that radical non-attachment, that vairagya, that healthy sense of letting go of what we need to let go of through our practice. And when we do this, when we engage in, with intention, abhyasa and vairagya, what we find is that it gives us perspective, it gives us drishti, it gives us focus. And that focus allows us to tap into the gift of discernment, viveka. We sometimes talk about this gift also as the inner guidance within us, the voice of the buddhi, that voice of enlightenment that comes from within. That is the faculty of discernment, viveka. With that viveka, with that discernment, we start to be able to see through very powerful lenses. And we talked about two that are related. One is called ekatva, And this is the lens of oneness, or we can say radical empathy. This is the yoga of empathy, where we recognize and honor and celebrate the differences. And at the same time, our celebration and our honoring of those differences is um, placed on, or it's built on, the foundation of recognizing the spiritual oneness of all beings, the inherent dignity, the inherent spiritual substance and energy, shakti, of all beings. Wherever there is life, there is that divine spark. This is ekatva. That ekatva we talked about, as it matures, as it deepens, as it blossoms, it starts to take more and more the form of maitri, or loving kindness. And we engaged in that powerful loving kindness meditation, where we go from experiencing that feeling of kindness and compassion, of love, of gentleness from ourselves. So it starts with being able to practice it within, being able to practice self-care, and it expands and grows to our loved ones, to perhaps the stranger or acquaintance, to even those relationships that have been challenging, where there may be some barriers, there may be some apparent discord. We may have been disappointed by people, or we may have disappointed them. We may have been hurt by people, or we may have hurt them. We may be holding on to things. And as we feel safe doing so, with our practice of Maitri, we can go into a place of holding even those relationships with loving kindness. Our capacity for that loving kindness is built on the foundation of faith, shraddha, where we place our hearts, the paradigm we choose to accept and we choose to engage with. That paradigm, that shraddha, is very much related to this attitude of gratitude that we talked about, kritagya, the idea of being grateful. And is that loving kindness and maitri is nourished by practices of remembrance, smarana, and forbearance, titiksha, practicing this forbearance in the mood of the lessons that we can learn from the forbearing tree, always eager to give to others, being willing even to perform self-sacrifice in a mood of serving and uplifting others. We talked last week about how we approach Shanti with balance, with dynamic balance, yukta, recognizing the dangers of either extreme, but finding that place of not only moderation, but of dynamic balance, of going from each extreme, coming to that middle path, recognizing where we need to lean in and where we need to lean back. And we recognize that the relationship between Shanti and Dharma requires us not only to cultivate Shanti within, which is important, but to live that Shanti and that Dharma out, to bring our practice into the world as enlightened activists. Now, whether that activism brings us to literal and explicit forms of activism, such as protests or political action, or whether that activism is simply in how we carry ourselves, how we present ourselves, the words that we use, the energy that we put out, whatever it is, this is very much in the spirit of karma yoga, of living out our Shanti, living out our Dharma, living out our yoga. And so as we go into this month of a bit of a break from at least our formal gatherings, but I hope that you will consider continuing your own practices and perhaps even deepening your practice through the summer month of July. We might also use it as an opportunity to take stock, to introspect, and to review, and to ask, what are my gifts? Perhaps even using some of these principles that we talked about. Among these principles, where do I feel really comfortable? Where do I feel like I got this? And maybe where I can even deepen that. and recognizing also, where are my growing edges? What doesn't feel as comfortable? What doesn't feel as natural to me? Where am I really struggling, perhaps? And how can I use this time to deepen those practices also, and to stretch myself a little bit? And of course, that third question: where is there grace? Where do I feel the grace of something higher, something deeper, something beyond my own efforts? And if we are people of faith, if part of our practice is a relationship with the divine, this is a place to really recenter everything we're doing on that relationship. Where can I see the dynamic nature of this relationship with my divine beloved in these practices, in these principles? And if that's not so much of our part of our practice, we can still find grace. We can still seek to recognize that grace that's flowing, whether that's the grace of the loved ones around us, whether that's the grace of the larger whole, the beloved community that we're a part of, or whether that's the grace of just knowing mystery, knowing that which we don't know, and recognizing that there's so much to the universe that is beyond us. I'm happy, by the way, to share these principles in case you weren't able to jot them down, or get the names. If it's helpful to you, if you'd like to, just drop me a note and I'd be happy to email that to you. But now I want to hold some time for those who can stay. I recognize some folks need to go, but for those who can stay, if you've got any questions, comments, reflections, or shares, this is a time that we want to welcome that. And of course, if you do have to go now, thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful journey with us. And we will hopefully see you in August. But for those who can stay, I'd love to just turn it over to our group here. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or share a comment. So there's a question coming in through the chat box, that in the meditation today, I touched on the idea of the heart as the mystical seat of the self. It's a very vast subject, and perhaps something that we can pick up in a little bit more detail in August when we resume. But for now, let me just say this is something that is especially a very integral part of my own practice. As some of you know, um, my own practice is very much situated in a lineage of what's called Bhakti Marga, or Bhakti Yoga, the path of grace, the path of devotion. Of course, there's devotion and grace in all yoga paths and in all yoga philosophy, but this is a path that really emphasizes and uses the idea of relationship and devotion and devotional connection and grace as the kind of the focal point and the lens through which all these other aspects of yoga philosophy and practice are engaged with. And in this lineage and in this practice or this path, um, what's really emphasized is, while the self, the Atman or the Purusha, the observer, that's who we really are. The way that we access that is really through engaging with the heart space. This doesn't just mean, of course, the physical organ of the heart, but when we talk about the heart space, we really talk about um, that that seat of awareness that goes beyond intellectual thought. So if we think of the headspace as being very much in the realm of intellectual thought, um, that's important. That's a gift that's valuable. We honor that, and at the same time, we recognize that that intellectual thought, that tendency to think. Sometimes it's called categorical thought. So categorical thought also reaches its limit, And what it should bring us to is more and more of an awareness and being in touch with this other way of thinking, this other way of engaging with awareness and consciousness that these seers and sages describe as being situated in the heart space. So this is thinking through feeling, thinking through connection, through well, even if we look at the word empathy, right? Pathos, feeling is in there. So it's engaging and connecting through the faculty of feeling. And so in one sense, this tradition would say that it's not a coincidence that this is the place that is closest to the true self, because this is closest to the nature of the true self. We are pure awareness, we are pure being or eternality, and we are pure bliss. And this is all experienced through feeling through the heart center. I know that's a lot, and I hope I haven't confused anyone too much, but that just is touching on the importance of the heart. Hope that's okay. Any other questions, thoughts, shares, reflections?
Hey, Vinit, Malte here. Just wanted
Hey,
to
Malta.
quickly say thank you very much for doing this whole session, and it has been like super helpful to make sense of everything that's going on, and like as a just to have like some spiritual guidance throughout this whole time. And I also really like appreciated this as like continuation of the things that we talked about in India. And so I really hope you'll keep this going and resume it like in August and the following months after that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malta. Thank you so much for your encouragement. And if I'm being honest, this also for me has been a really rich experience to keep me connected at a time that can sometimes feel very, very difficult and challenging. So I'm getting out of it. You know, I hope that you know the same kind of value that you all are getting out of it. Please know that I'm also getting that out of it, and I hope, God willing, to keep it going. Okay, friends. Well, it's been such a pleasure and honor and delight to spend this time with you each week. I encourage you to keep up your own practice or practices, and also to take this time. I hope it's a time, at least in some way, if not a full time, off from work and other obligations. I hope that it can be at least partially a time of rest and restoration for you as well. And I'm so much looking forward to seeing you in August when we resume. Okay. Take good care, everyone. Thank you so much. Namaste.